Right now, the explosive documentary that has America talking.
I thought it was horribly one-sided. It was agenda-driven.
Is this man a cold-blooded killer? Or one of the biggest victims of police misconduct this country has ever seen?
The DNA from Stephen Avery could have been transferred under that hood any number of ways.
Tonight, Stephen Avery, the man at the center of the Netflix Making a Murderer series. I investigate the case that has everyone choosing sides, with a panel of experts and those directly connected to the case.
Just because a documentary on TV says something doesn't mean that that's actually what the evidence shows.
Stephen Avery, Guilty or Framed, a Justice Special, starts now. Hello and welcome to a special edition of Justice. Stephen Avery, Guilty or Framed. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm going to break down the case behind the Netflix documentary, Making a Murderer, that has the whole country captivated. I'll grill key players in the trial, talk to Avery's family, and ask two top criminal defense attorneys if they believe the killer, Stephen Avery, could be innocent. But first, a quick look at the facts.
We're getting threats. The Sheriff's Department is getting threats daily.
Public outcry over the Netflix documentary, Making a Murderer, which focuses on Stephen Avery, a man who's now in prison for murder.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Stephen Avery, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide.
But it once was exonerated by DNA after serving 18 years on a separate assault conviction.
I am so sorry for what happened to you. You were not a rapist, and that's what you were charged with and convicted of.
Avery's sordid tale began in 1980, his first in a string of arrests for crimes including burglary, animal cruelty, and an assault on his cousin, who happened to be the wife of a Manitowoc County Sheriff's deputy. But Avery's life changed forever on July 29, 1985, when a local woman was sexually assaulted. She described her attacker to police, who provide her with a photo array of 9 men. She selects Avery. He's arrested. Authorities were the department.
The sheriff told me I got you now. I got to jail.
Despite presenting 16 alibi witnesses and a receipt from a store several miles away from where the rape occurred, Avery is convicted.
My eyes told me if you admit to it, we'll let you out. I don't want you to be here until you're MR. You know? That's why I'll be here to my mind, because I ain't admit to it. I'm not going to lie.
In 2003, Avery's conviction is overturned and he's released as DNA evidence reveals a separate attacker. He files a $36 million lawsuit against Manitowoc County and law enforcement.
What do you hope comes from this?
Something good. I suffered long enough for 18 years, so I just have to wait a little bit more.
It's this lawsuit that the Netflix documentary alleges triggered his arrest on murder charges.
We believe that the series is representative of what we witnessed. The key pieces of the state's evidence are included in the series.
Halloween 2005. Photographer Teresa Halbach disappears. She is scheduled to meet with Stephen Avery at his home that day to photograph a minivan for Auto Trader magazine. A few days later, her car and charred bone fragments were found on the Avery family property. Avery arrested again, this time for murder.
Did you kill Teresa Halbach?
No, not at all.
He maintained that authorities attempted to frame him so he couldn't win his civil case regarding the false rape conviction.
Planning evidence. How else could it be there? I didn't do nothing. It don't make no sense.
But Assistant District Attorney in Manitowoc County, Michael Griesbach, says there was no cover-up.
I thought it was horribly one-sided. It was agenda-driven.
And a jury agreed. On March 18, 2007, Avery was found guilty of murdering Hallback and sentenced to life in prison, but still maintains his innocence.
You know, last time it took me 18 years and 6 weeks to prove my innocence. This time I don't know how long.
Now to my all-star panel to break down this controversial series. Fox News' own Laura Ingle, who actually covered the Stephen Avery murder case, and criminal defense attorneys Barry Slotnick and James Kasouras. All right, everyone, I'm going to start with you, Barry. Avery continues to maintain his innocence. You saw the series. You've read a lot of this case. Is this man guilty?
This man deserves a new trial.
Why?
That conviction should be set aside because leading up to the conviction, there were such terrible things that occurred. The county issued got a search warrant. They weren't supposed to go in because they're being sued for $36 million.
Yeah, for the rape case that he was released on.
Absolutely.
All right, but wasn't the Calumet County Sheriff's Department involved in this as well?
County Sheriff's Department was involved in it to a certain extent. We think they closed both eyes. We're wondering how the evidence got to where it got and whether, in fact, this man received a proper trial. Remember, 170,000 people and counting have written, "Pardon him."
Well, yeah, a lot of people want him pardoned, and I'm going to get to that. I honestly think that this whole series is a defense-driven advocacy exercise. But, Jim, let me go to you. What is it that people are so obsessed about that they believe that the police planted evidence? Tell us what those pieces are.
Well, what they're obsessed about is the evidence of it. The Manitowoc Police Department was told to stay out of it. The investigating agency was told, keep them out of it, and when they are involved, watch them. They searched the premises several times. No key is found. The one, Lieutenant Link, finds his way back into the premises.
From the original county.
From the original county.
Right.
And he's not supposed to be there, and he's not supposed to be unsupervised. He finds himself in there alone, and voila, we now have the victim's key. And then you look at the key, it's tested, and the forensic results are that it only has his DNA on it. Now, this is a key that this young lady was using for how long? And I know you have Dr. Bodden here, and he'll speak to this, but the notion that there would be one donor on that key, and then none of her DNA...
Well, what does that tell you? It tells you someone cleaned the key.
No,
the question is, who did?
Well, but the point is this. What you remember is the testimony at the trial by the initial officer was that I searched those premises, and I didn't find the key was not there. Link finds his way in there, all of a sudden nobody's looking at him, the key is there. Same thing with the bullet joint.
I'm going to go to Barry in a minute, but Laura Ingle, you covered this trial.
Right.
What was the testimony? This key was not there and then it was there. I believe there was some testimony that someone shook a bookcase and it came off. Tell us what happened.
It was one of the deputies who went in, and he says that he's in the bedroom and he's looking around at the nightstand and he shook it around, and then it was suddenly found by Lenk on the floor. But again, that room had been searched several times, and that's why it is so suspect. But he claims, the sheriff's deputy, that he went in and he just moved things around, and that's how it appeared.
But, you know, and I don't know if we have any pictures of this, but, I mean, if you look at that bedroom, there was a lot of stuff in there. But, Barry, let me go back to you on this thing with the key. The fact that her DNA is not on the key simply tells me, as a prosecutor, someone wiped her DNA. Someone didn't want people to know they were her keys. Who had a motive to do that?
Or someone planted that key after finding it, taking off the DNA, taking off the fingerprints, and doing all sorts of bad things. That's not what our system's about. They deserve a new trial. Well, he deserves a new trial.
But you know what? This case has gone up. They had a jury of 12 people, agreed beyond a reasonable doubt. This guy, Avery, had an incredible defense team. I thought they did a great job.
I have an important question.
What?
2 convictions. I only see one now. What happened?
Okay,
he was falsely accused.
Right.
Falsely accused.
Upheld.
And it happened again.
Right. But, you know, you want to get into it. This is a guy who is a convicted felon. He's a career criminal. He's got a burglary conviction. He's got an animal cruelty conviction. He's got a conviction for forcing a woman off the side of the road and pointing a shotgun at her because she claimed he was masturbating on the side of the street. Now, those are 3 convictions. I have a little trouble with this guy. Let me go to you, Jim.
Wait a minute. One quick second.
I left out the rape because he didn't commit it.
Yes.
We
He's
would hope
accused
so.
and convicted. The same jury that convicted him also convicted him of rape, a rape that he did not do.
It's not the same jury.
Even the prosecutors found he didn't do that rape, and they dismissed.
Right.
After 18 years.
Right, and that's because, you know what, I don't want to discuss that. What I will admit readily, right off the bat, is that he was wrongfully convicted and DNA proved him to be not the person. But Jim, what about things like his blood? They say that the police planted his blood from the rape case that Barry was just talking about on some of the evidence.
Well, the way that came about is so suspect, and that's the problem with this case. Every bit of it, the testimonial evidence and the forensic evidence, is so suspect. Towards the end, or towards the trial, all of a sudden we find a vial of blood from the old case that is unsealed. And then all the defense asked for was the opportunity to do proper EDTA testing. They were denied that opportunity, but the state was allowed the opportunity to do unreliable tests within 2 or 3 days.
All right, let me just explain to the viewers. EDTA is the preservative that is added to a vial of blood that keeps it and preserves it for future use. What was it like in the courtroom, Laura, when this came out?
Well, you know, as you watch this documentary unfold, you see the tension that's in the courtroom. And one of the things that I really picked up on, so we were there with our cameras in 2007, just before the trial begins. And you could cut the hatred for Stephen Avery with a knife. Any diner, coffee shop, grocery store you went into, people hated this guy. It was like a hang 'em high attitude.
Why? What were they saying about
A lot of people, well, the Avery family doesn't have, you know, a lot of love in the town, so to speak. A lot of people don't like this family. So a lot of people felt duped at the time in 2007. They felt duped that he got out, he was exonerated, and then they felt that he did something really, really horrible. Fast forward to where we are now with this Netflix series and everybody watching this and this call for a pardon and all these people signing this petition that of course can't be, the president can't give him a pardon because it's a state crime. But it's just really interesting to see the amount of people coming forward now saying this guy is innocent, this guy deserves a second chance compared to what we saw in 2007.
Barry, very quickly, I mean, his sweat DNA is under the hood of her car. Sweat DNA is not something that you can transfer. And, so how do you explain his sweat DNA, the murderer, as I call him, convicted murderer, being under a car? You can't transplant that.
Was it admitted at the trial?
Yeah.
Yeah,
but it was not in the documentary, so-called documentary.
I do remember that nobody that I know has ever gotten killed by sweat. And I'm not sure, well, let's look at it this way. He got convicted for rape. And what happened at the end of it? They said, "Oh, we're sorry. The DNA proves you didn't rape anybody."
Well, there was
you weren't the person.
Apparently there was no DNA. Okay, the DNA has come a long way, and now we've got this sweat DNA, Jim, that cannot be, transplanted. And you've got his sweat DNA on her keys as well. That's not something that you can kind of move around like the blood.
Well, but we have to remember that this woman had an appointment to go there. She was going there in order to videotape or in order to photograph cars. There's no dispute.
At his request.
But there's no dispute. Well, at his request, other family members knew that she was going to be there. So the fact that his sweat is purportedly found under the hood does not mean that
What do
he
you
killed
mean
her.
other family members knew he was going to be there?
I understand that his brother knew that he was going to be there. There were other family members.
No, he called and hit star 67, so they would know that he was calling for her to be there.
Well, but that's only on a couple of the calls, and I know
the day
that's
killed.
interesting evidence. But the fact of the matter is that no other steps were taken by him or anybody else to hide the fact that she was going to be there. There was none of that.
All right, Jim Kasoris, Barry Slotnick, Laura Engel. This is a great case. I want to thank you all for being here. And are the police out to get Stephen Avery? It was the crux of the defense's case in the murder trial. Tonight I'll talk one-on-one with the sheriff of Manitowoc County about the case and his cops. And next, the man who put Stephen Avery in prison, prosecutor Ken Kratz, joins me with the evidence he has that you did not see in the making of a murderer. But first, I want you to know what you think. Was justice served in the Stephen Avery murder conviction? Facebook or tweet me, #guilty or framed.
The amount of obvious injustice that's occurred throughout the investigation and everyone agrees that it's ridiculous and illegal to seize somebody's property for 8 days like that, and then to find evidence in plain view after not having found it the first several searches.
Was vital evidence that led a jury to convict Stephen Avery of murder purposely left out of the Netflix documentary? My next guest, the special prosecutor responsible for Avery's conviction, says yes, and that the filmmakers intentionally withheld crucial facts from the viewers. Earlier, I spoke with the former district attorney for Calumet County, Ken Kratz. Take a look. Ken, thanks for being with us. You actually tried this case. You were the district attorney at the time. You know the evidence. You presented it. The jury found him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You've seen this so-called documentary. What did they get wrong?
Well, they forgot all of the state's side of the case, at least those things that dispelled any concept of planting evidence or conspiracy. You know, Judge, I don't care if they put a defense advocacy piece out there. It's actually very well done for what it is. But to call it a documentary, you better be putting those things that are inconsistent with the conclusion that it is that you're trying to get people to buy.
Give me an example give me an example of what's inconsistent with the way they present the evidence.
Well, they never tell the audience that the victim's camera or her cell phone or her PDA are found burned in Mr. Avery's burn barrel, which was on the other side of his yard. They don't talk about the DNA on the hood latch underneath the victim's car. All of these things are inconsistent with any kind of planting evidence, and for some reason the filmmakers decided, in my opinion, and I'll stand by this, intentionally neglected or omitted all of this evidence for the viewers to consider.
All right. Well, and when you talk about the DNA of the defendant, Stephen Avery, under the hood of the car, her car, that was sweat DNA, was it not? It was not like they claimed the blood DNA was from the other case where he was acquitted. Sweat DNA is not something that, you just carry around with you and slap under the hood of a car.
That's right. And to be fair, DNA cannot be taken from sweat itself. It's actually skin cells that are inside of the sweat, but the concept is that his sweaty hands reached underneath the hood and got onto the hood latch. You know, the planting defense is they've got this vial of blood and they're spraying it all over the place. No suggestion at all that they had a vial of a sweat.
Okay, and the whole idea of the EDTA, which is the preservative that is used to preserve blood in criminal cases, I mean, I've seen it a lot. The FBI comes in and they say, we didn't find any evidence of the preservative, therefore suggesting it was his blood. But everybody says the FBI's wrong. What's your take on that?
Well, the FBI was actually very careful to develop a test for this case. They were able, within, and their measure was within 1/50th of a drop of blood to tell a detection limit whether or not there was EDTA in this blood. That's certainly enough. You know, this vial of blood is just chock full of this preservative EDTA, and for the FBI to do the test and to say this blood came from active bleeding of Stephen Avery. You remember, Judge, that Stephen Avery had cut his finger. He was actively bleeding in 6 different places on the SUV. That's the kind of thing that you can't get wrong all those different times. And if you've got this EDTA-filled blood and there's no EDTA in the blood that was recovered from inside the SUV, it's not from that vial.
Okay, a last question. She was afraid of him. She didn't want to go back. He's blocking his calls to her. Were you able to get that evidence before the jury that she had told her employee or a fellow employer that she didn't want to go back?
Well, the evidence was that she certainly was told not to go into this person's home, that she was creeped out by this individual. The judge did not allow the towel evidence, that she had seen him in a towel earlier. Remember, there were some motions that were brought both during and before the trial that talked about some evidence being more prejudicial than probative. You're certainly familiar with that concept, but the point is that he did target her, and this isn't the case of just happening upon it. This man is right where he needs to be, Judge.
All right, Ken Kratz, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Judge.
We requested both of Stephen Avery's defense attorneys from the murder trial. They declined an interview, but next, you'll hear what one of them told our Megyn Kelly this week. Plus, I go one-on-one with Avery's cousin, who is a staunch defender of his innocence. And later, he's one of the best-known forensic pathologists in the world. Dr. Michael Baden is here. I'll ask him about the bones, the blood, and how it all adds up. Stay with us.